Telling tales for dark nights.
Waking Nightmare, Chapter 4. Written by Jackson Barnard. Narrated by Dr. Creepen. Featuring Jason Hill. After a long time, the ship stopped its curved path around the island and started a tangential path away from the burning remains of the city. The only civilization the man had come to see on this horrid seafaring trip was slowly sinking away beneath the horizon. He felt both relief and unfathomable dread at the sight of the wreckage dipping lower and lower from his eyes. He really didn't want to make port on such a claustrophobic slab of land where there were no living people and no solace from the flames, but he also didn't want to spend another minute on the damned ship. Whatever was in control of the vessel, whether it be the demon or some other ghastly unknown entity, it didn't want him off its boat anytime soon. It was leading him somewhere.
Or away from somewhere.
The latter idea was far more terrifying. If he was purposefully being shipped away from somewhere, his home perhaps, then that meant the ship had no actual destination. It could be floating in the middle of the ocean forever, and he wouldn't be able to disembark. He didn't know where the ship would be going, but perhaps he could find out where he was. The stars above twinkled in their ethereal realm. They held the key to his location, he was sure. And even if he couldn't discern where in the world he was, he could at least know what time of year it was. Different constellations are only seen at certain times of the year, or at least that was what he remembered.
Funny how I can remember stupid stuff like stars, but I can't remember my own name.
He had a feeling that that was the least of his worries. He scanned the night sky, searching for familiar stars and constellations, the big and important ones that he could recall.
Oh, that one's probably Vega. And the one to the right might be Arcturus?
He had to focus. Those big, bright stars weren't what he was looking for. He had to find Polaris, the North Star, first, then worry about everything else. As his eyes swept across the inky void, he quietly muttered the names of the stars comprising the Big Dipper, Ursa Major, the constellation that would help him locate Polaris.
Alcade, Alcor, and Mizor, Aloth, and Megris, Dundafeda, and finally Marak, Dupi, pointing to Polaris.
He recited them from a memory he had no idea he possessed. Where and when he learned the stars' names, he hadn't a clue. It was a lifetime ago. Several lifetimes ago, it felt like. A time too far to remember and too distant to reach. He began formulating hypotheses of where he might be, constructing a list of if this, then that's, pouring out more knowledge from an unknown source tapped within his head. If Polaris was directly above him, perpendicular to the ship and the sea, he would be very close to the North Pole. But considering the night air wasn't remotely cold at all, he figured that wouldn't be the case. If the star was on the cusp of the horizon, the ship would be near the equator. He scanned the night sky. He scanned it again and again. Ursa Major, the stars, they weren't there. Dubhe and Merak didn't point to the North Star because he couldn't find them. The Big Dipper, with its long handle and deep gourd, it wasn't in the sky. Neither was the Little Dipper. The star he previously thought was Vega wasn't Vega. If it was, it would have been connected to the constellation Lyra. Arcturus wasn't Arcturus. It wasn't a part of Bootis. Bootis wasn't even there. Lyra wasn't there. Cygnus, Hercules, Ophiuchus, Aquila. None of the summer constellations were in the sky. He had assumed it was summer, the hot air stifling his lungs long after the fire had been past. But he didn't see any recognizable shapes in the sky. The winter constellations, Orion, Gemini, Canis Major, they weren't there either. Pegasus, the giant square in the sky, wasn't there to indicate autumn. Leo and Virgo didn't indicate spring. There was nothing familiar in the sky.
I'm probably in the southern hemisphere. Yeah, that's why I can't find the North Star.
But in his heart, he knew he was wrong. Some ancient part of him had also memorized the southern stars and constellations. He didn't see Scorpius, with its slithering body and two-pronged head. He didn't see Sagittarius, the tea kettle in the sky. Phoenix, Lupus, Centaurus, Hydra, Carina. He didn't see any of them. The only recognizable feature in the heavens was a faint aurora borealis glow snaking up from the horizon behind the ship. He was lost. Lost at sea in an unknown world. A wave of nausea swept over him, and he collapsed to his knees. He was dizzy from looking at the sky too long. But more than that, he was sick to his stomach. He was sick of the things he couldn't control. He couldn't will the ship to transport him to safety, nor the city he left behind to extinguish its fire, nor the demon who was still somewhere below deck to take its lead. The one thing he had going for him, the one clue hidden in the stars, turned out to be a sham. He couldn't control that either. He was hungry and thirsty as well. How long had it been, he imagined, since he last ate something or had a gulp of clear, cool water? He couldn't control the animal instincts inside him, telling him to move and get something to eat or perish. But he was tired. Oh, so tired. He had been scared half to death, chased all about the ship, climbed an ungodly amount of stairs, saw an entire island go up in flames, and everything else in between. His exhaustion weighed heavily upon his neck, like a yoke over cattle. He couldn't bear the brunt of this nightmare anymore. He begged the cosmos.
Sleep. Just let me sleep. Oh, just a few minutes. Just a little nap to rest my eyes.
He thought briefly of the bird who came to him not that long ago. His eyes began to close as he remembered the brilliance of the dove that perched next to him on the railing. How bright and colourful it had appeared compared to the bleak world around him. He had spoken to the bird, and it had returned the favour.
Strange thing, ain't it? A talking bird.
His body slumped against the nearby wall, and his arms slid from the railing to his side, brushing against the gift the bird had given him, still within his pocket. Half dazed and half awake, he considered again the advice he'd been given.
Heed the bird.
His eyes shot back open. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the orange pill bottle.
Heed the bird. Her gift will show the way.
He shook the bottle. He felt tiny objects bounce around the small container.
Pills. Medication?
But for what? He uncapped the strange bottle and gingerly tapped out its prized contents into his hand. 4 blue capsules, no bigger than the width of his thumb, tumbled out to greet him. 4 gems in the palm of his hand, so precious and fragile. He knew the diminutive capsules were vastly important to escaping his nightmare, but he had no idea what they would do to him, much less how they would aid him in his journey.
I've got nothing to lose.
Feeling fatigue slowly crawl back into his brain, he popped one of the capsules into his mouth and rolled the other 3 back into the bottle. Popping the cap back on, he dry swallowed the pill. It left a scratchy sensation in the back of his throat, as if he tried to swallow a handful of sand. He sat for a minute, letting the pill make its way down his esophagus and into his stomach, giving it time to dissolve. Nothing happened.
I don't know what I was expecting.
The gift, like the stars above, was nothing but a lie, it seemed. He felt tired again. Losing hope once was one thing, but losing hope twice was excruciating to his psyche. He had no more energy to spend, nothing left in the tank to go with. He just wanted to sleep. He wanted to ignore the scars on his arm, warning him against such an act. Don't die. Don't sleep. Two very simple rules to follow, but he didn't care anymore. He was running on fumes, as was the ship by the looks of it, and he just wanted to fall into an empty void. But as he closed his eyes, it was not an empty void that met him. A pinprick of light, surrounded by swirling colors at the edges of his vision, lay twinkling in his view. The light grew larger, brighter, more defined. He opened his eyes in shock, wondering what was happening to him. But even with his eyes open, the light remained, growing. The ship he was on warped in his vision, and the bright light absorbed everything he could see. He was swimming in a void of white. Flashes of color exploded and faded. Dots and circles with more color sprouted and fled from his view. He was hallucinating, probably from a lack of sleep. Or could it be?
The pill.
The colors and shapes became sharper, and soon images swam in his head.
The ship. The burning island. The dove. The demon. The red door.
All of the things he'd seen before. These were, perhaps, memories of a weakened mind giving way to a hallucinogenic drug. But then, there was more. Pictures and images he hadn't seen. A banquet hall with heaps of food and drink. The engineering room, humongous pistons and gears chugging to keep the ship moving. The crow's nest next to the smokestack. The expanse of the ocean reaching out forever in every direction. The captain's room, with the wheel of the ship and navigation equipment all shut down, except for the sonar bleeping and showing the shape of the ocean floor. A door with a large letter L. The demon, staring intently out of one of the portholes, far below in the belly of the ship. And, just like that, the light faded and the ship's deck came back into view. He stood up. He was no longer hungry. He was no longer thirsty. He wasn't tired anymore. Energy seemed to permeate from him. The pill had not only lent him relief for the time being, but provided clues. He wasn't certain what each image meant exactly, but it gave him hope. He had to go back down to the ship and confront the demon. He knew this. But not right now. He wasn't ready. First, he had to explore more of the ship. Find resources, weapons, anything to assist him in the maniacal game he was playing.
I think I'll start with the captain's room.
He placed the orange pill bottle back into his pocket. 3 precious pills remained. He would have to use them wisely.
Chilling tales for dark nights.